Someone asked if original N64 buttons could be swapped into an 8BitDo 64 controller, and in this video, we try to answer that. I have this old N64 controller that I got in a bundle years ago. It actually doesn't work, and it's kind of crusty now that I'm actually looking at it again. But it has the button pads and button covers that we need to test this out. First, I tear down the N64 controller, starting with removing the screws holding the shell together. And once it's cracked open, we've got a 30-year-old circuit board staring right back at us. I start removing the plastic shoulder buttons, and then the shoulder button pads. And the rubber buttons have this conductive material on the bottom that completes the circuit when you press them down and they make contact with the controller circuit board, and that registers as an input. Here you can see that circuit. Then I remove the shoulder button circuit boards and try to remove the main circuit board, but find out it's still holding on for dear life. It looks like the analog stick module needs to be unscrewed. And when I unscrew it and try again, the whole thing comes right out. On this board, you can see the other half of the button pads that the rubber buttons make contact with, and this tells the processor when a button is pressed. Inside the top part of the shell are the rubber button pads and the button covers that we need. Lifting up the rubber button pad for the face buttons, we can see the colored button covers. It's going to be important for this button pad to have the right shape to fit the 8BitDo 64 controller. I can easily pop the button covers out by turning the shell over and then trying not to lose them all. Here you can see the A and B button covers, and then the C button covers. I need to get the start button pad and cover. And removing the D button rubber pad reveals the D button cover, and that's the last thing we need. I use a small flathead screwdriver to pop off the back plates on the 8BitDo controller's hand grips. That reveals 6 star screws that need to be removed, 3 on each side, and to do that you need a star key that's size T6. And it needs to be a little bit long and skinny in order to get to the 2 middle screws on each side. Once the screws are out, I try to pry off the back shell, a little bit of hand force here. Then we can see the guts of the 8BitDo controller. Remove the battery cover here so I can unplug the battery and then also reveal a 5th screw. And now there's 5 screws that need to be removed in order to pull the circuit board out. Once it's out, you can see the modern version of the conductive button circuit. And like on the N64 controller top shell, you can see the rubber button pads and the covers for the 8BitDo controller. The shape of the face button pad looks similar to the OG controller's pad. Same with the D-pad button pad. And the start buttons pad. The interesting thing about the button covers are the pegs around the sides are unique, so each cover only fits in one hole. And to finish this, I just remove the button covers from the 8BitDo controller. The 2 face button pads look very similar in shape, so that's a good sign. As well as the D button pads. And the start button pads look close enough. I spotted the first big difference looking at the D-pad covers. The original D-pad is thicker in its height and along the raised visible parts that need to poke through the shell. You can see this difference looking at the 2 head-on. And now the next big difference is the original A, B, and start button caps are taller than the 8BitDo ones. And at least one of the original C button caps is taller than all of the 8BitDo ones. But I'm going to try to swap them nonetheless. Starting with the B button, it slots into the 8BitDo shell nice and snugly, and the pegs line up. Next up is the A button, and it also slots into the shell with the pegs lining up. Then I go with the start button, and to no surprise by now, the pegs on the cover line up nicely. No issues there, nice. With those in place, I turn to the C button covers, just start knocking them out one by one. Next up is the D-pad, which I'm not expecting to go as smoothly. I run into the issue that I was fearful of, it's too thick to fit. I tried to use force to make it fit, but no dice. Flipped it over real quick just to take a look at the progress, and I like this look a lot. I'm going to try adding the original rubber button pads to see if we can get that real authentic feel. And surprisingly, the face button pad fits really well. The start button pad fits well enough. And I'm just going to use the D-pad that comes with the 8BitDo 64 controller since the original one doesn't fit. Button up the controller enough to try testing out the buttons, and for the C buttons they actually feel pretty good, but for the A, B, and start buttons the covers are just too long and the buttons can't actually be pressed, so they're not going to work. Log this one as a partial success. So I tear down the controller again and remove the original button covers for the A, B, and start button and just replace them. I added the original N64 face button pad back, but switched to the start button pad from the 8BitDo controller. Okay, button everything back up again to try testing the buttons out. Now we're just left with the original N64 C button covers and the face button pad, but the small splash of color from the C buttons actually looks pretty nice here. I booted up the Steam input tester to see if the original N64 controller's face button pad could register inputs, and to my surprise it actually worked. C button covers actually worked nicely, and the A, B, and C buttons all registered inputs in the input tester. However, the A and B buttons were extremely spongy compared to the button pad that came with the 8BitDo 64 controller. So for one last time, I tore down the controller, removed the original N64's face button pad, and replaced it with the face button pad that came with the 64 controller from 8BitDo. And I tested the controller in the Steam input tester again, and the A and B buttons were noticeably more responsive, a lot clickier, way less spongy. So after all of that, I only swapped out the C button covers, but there's an opportunity here to keep looking for something that will ultimately work. Thanks for watching this video, and until next time, deuces.